Shadiversity.
Greetings, I'm Shad, and Gladiator 2 is out, and I've actually done a full review over on Night's Watch. Very detailed, in-depth in the story, scripted, high-quality content, so do go check it out if you haven't seen it. But this video in particular here on Shadiversity, I want to look at the opening battle, because like Gladiator 1, Gladiator 2 begins with a grand, epic battle, trying to establish the main character as, a type of warrior who should be feared. But that part kind of falls flat. The whole film falls flat, honestly. I wasn't impressed, as I was not impressed by the opening battle, which is a siege. And actually, maybe I was impressed by how bad it was, because it was so bad that I'm doing this battle scene autopsy, where we're going to go through, break it down, and analyze it for its tactical validity, its realism, and all of that. And so it's going to be fun, and we're going to get into it. But before we dive into the details as to the many, and I mean many issues in regards to the opening siege of Gladiator 2, even though this film has trouble keeping track of certain time periods, you'll be able to keep track of time far easier with what I'm about to share with you now, because this video is brought to you by Valamore Watches. So we have mentioned Valamore Watches on the channel previously, and it turns out you guys really like them, because we like them as well. They are a high-end, medieval-styled premium watch brand.
Yes, if you like medieval things, which if you're here, you probably do, these watches are actually pretty cool. You know, they're a micro brand and they have some cool designs here. I don't think this one's called the Kilgara, I get the names mixed up. There's the Arthur one, the Kilgara one, and we've had several people here, namely Nate and Nathan, who used to wear their Valamore watches on the daily.
Seriously. Now, some of the things I love about them, like the watch handles, right? Hands. They look like swords. There's all medieval styles. On some of their styles, they have like a dragon scale kind of motif on the face. They have medieval styled buckles on them with these cool patterns and designs, and on top of that they're actually high-end watches with some really good features.
Yes, they have a stainless steel case, a sapphire crystal. On top of that they have 42 millimeters. They have the leather bands, rubber bands. They also have a steel band. So they have quite a lot that you can choose from. They come in a bunch of different colors, namely things like the blue, the red. They have purple.
I love the red. You know, Shad red.
Tyranth red.
Best color.
Anyway, did you want to mention the promo code?
Well, that's the cool thing, right? If you use the promo code SHAD2024, you get 35% off. That's a huge discount for a high-end premium watch. And seriously, if you know anyone who likes medieval stuff, if you like medieval stuff, great gift for yourself, great Christmas gift for others, right, coming up towards Christmas. Genuinely brilliant. They have a limited supply left.
They don't have many left, yeah.
So get in quickly, use the code SHAD2024, 35% off. That is brilliant, and you won't regret it. Everyone who's checked out these watches have loved them. I've been really impressed, and so really good quality. And you know something else that I think you'll be impressed by? The topic of this video, which is a lot of fun, so let's get back to it. The first thing that we're going to analyze is the overall logistics, the setup of the battle, and determine how viable or logical and therefore realistic this is. And from the outset, I was thrown off, because the Romans are besieging this city by sea. And in particular, they have siege towers on their boats. But as you'll kind of notice, even if we take a closer look, the siege towers aren't on every boat. And so, okay, if the tactic is to get the boat close enough so a siege tower will be able to enable, the besiegers to get atop the city's walls, what about all the soldiers on the boats without the siege towers? What are they just going to sail up to the city and then sit there and do nothing? If anything, it might make sense if they were in line behind the forward boat with a siege tower, and then when the boat with a siege tower gets on the wall, right, then all the other soldiers can jump from one boat to another to get to the boat with the siege tower and get atop the walls. But that's actually like jumping too far forward. Let's reel it back a bit and just have a question as to, hang on, siege towers on boats? Now here's the thing, right? It did happen very rarely historically, okay? But not the way that is being depicted here. And it was with very specific logistical reasons why. So if they're going to be using siege towers on boats, like what they're depicting here, you would think it would be quite important for them to justify it, explain the reasons why. And they actually don't even need to explain it. They can show it, meaning the city really should have no other viable approach of attack except by sea. The thing is, though, they actually show the opposite of that in Gladiator 2. This is the opening of the film, and this is the main character. He's in his yard, or in his farmland, he's, at peace, okay? And so, I shouldn't be too bad, but do you see something in the background, just here? You see the city's wall. And then they show another shot with the farmland distinctly in front of the city and the wall behind, and the alert being sounded from behind the city's walls beyond. That's an issue, because you know what they're also showing here? A viable path of attack, a viable approach to besiege the city that would be vastly less costly and vastly more efficient than attacking it by sea. Do you know one of the examples of where siege towers on boats was used was in the siege of Syracuse? And let me show you the city, and when I show you, you might get you might understand instinctively why it was required that they needed to besiege it in this way. This is an artistic representation of what Syracuse likely looked like during the time. And do you notice something? The main body of the city is on an island. There was no other path for approach apart by sea. Now, they could have perhaps taken the outer city on land, but then that leaves the issue of the main island. And trying to attack it, if there's a bridge to the main island, well, the defenders can easily knock down the bridge, actually, and that's something that they did do in things like that. Like they would knock down drawbridges and stuff to rob the enemy of having any access to the place that they're trying to besiege. So they would have to then face a sea battle anyway, or besiege it via sea. And one of the big problems with the siege of Syracuse is that it was really hard for the Romans to properly blockade it. Because there were so many places of possible approach, the city was able to get resupplied into the siege, which made it be drawn out much longer. Because that's one of the tactics in a siege, is to block off any viable way of approach and therefore starve it out. That's much easier to do on land, much harder to do on water. And so this is what we kind of think they might have looked like when they're approaching the city. And already you might notice that there's some distinct design differences. Better design differences. Please do note how far this kind of lowered bridge extends forward from the boat. This is going to be important in regards to how they depict this in Gladiator 2. Here is another artistic depiction of what it might have looked like. And the name of it is called, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, a Sambuca, or This is where I need better John's help. Okay, so they have been used, all right? The thing is, though, from the accounts I've been able to look up, it seems like every attempt at using these type of water-based siege engines, each time they have failed, because this is a profoundly inefficient way to besiege a city. One of the primary issues is that if you do manage to get one of the boats into position and lower that bridge, or even siege tower, we'll get there, towards the city, you're limited by the amount of people that can then use it. Get up the bridge or get up the siege tower onto the walls by the amount of people that can fit on the boat. In contrast to this, a siege tower that is land-based and put into position, the entire army can get access to it. Okay? And cities have fallen with siege towers, getting into position. Whereas ones like this, there are so many problems. Another big one is getting close enough. What if they're... And we'll talk about how they show this in Gladiator 2, because it should not work the way that they are depicted, because they show other things, which means that, right? Because if there is any level of, I guess, land extending forward from the wall, you're stuffed. You can't really use it. Now, there is another design of this type of water-based siege engine, but it was called the same name, Sambuca, right? And it was used, again, unsuccessfully in the siege of Rhodes in 88 BC. And this is what we think it might have looked like. And again, take note, this is vastly more similar to the, siege towers that we see in Gladiator 2, but with some very important, distinct differences. Its size. Look at how big this is. Look at how far the lowered bridge is extending forward from the siege tower. Look at the fact that it's on 2 boats. Okay, it's so big it required 2 boats, and by having 2 large boats supporting this much, and by the way, extending much higher as a result, you could then fit in on more men, which would mean more men would be able to get atop the walls. It's just, historical people weren't dumb. They were smart, okay? I get confused because it doesn't take too much of a critical eye to take a look at what they've done in Gladiator 2 to see that this is nonsense. This is not going to work nearly the way... literally, we see a boat here without a siege tower on it at all. What is that going to do in this battle? Nothing. It's just going to hit the wall, right? And then we can have a look at the siege towers themselves on the boats and see that these towers are not going to be effective. I mean, they have a mechanism to literally make them taller. So what we're seeing here, you'll be thinking that's not why they're tall enough. They actually like double in height. And then the siege towers that they show later on doesn't look like they had that but here it's like they're telescoped or something and they raise up, but then later on it doesn't look like they are. They're just like they made tall siege towers. But there is another issue that you might notice just by looking at this one right here. Do you see how far the bow extends forward beyond the siege tower? Right? Remember how I was saying the length of that bridge from the historical version was important to pay attention to? Yeah, because getting it to reach the wall is going to be an issue where the bridge here doesn't even look like it would reach past the boat. And then you have another big problem about the boat potentially running aground before it can get close enough to the wall, depending on how much land is extending away from the wall. Do you think that they're going to show that the walls just go down to the ocean, or that we'll see that there's actually land extending further out, which means these siege towers, they're not even going to reach. And then they're really small. They're only on one boat, and they're limited by the amount of people on them, and the fact that not every boat has them. Like, this is very dumb. This is very, very dumb. And bear in mind, from the accounts that I've been able to look up, the water-based siege boats, the Sambuca, they don't seem like they were ever effective. They failed in the siege of Syracuse. They were also used unsuccessfully in the siege of Chios? I'm so bad at pronouncing these historical names. And they were used unsuccessfully in the Battle of Rhodes as well. Yet in this battle, in Gladiator 2, versions of this concept which are vastly less effective, with not even all the boats using them, they don't even extend far enough forward, they're small, and a lot of other issues, logistical issues we'll get to, right, in terms of how they depict it. They magically are super effective because don't think about it. Movie. It just works. It just works. And this is all framed in the context that it wasn't even needed. They show that there's a section of the city that has an approachable path of attack via land, reaches right... roll the siege tower up on this section of wall. Attacking it by boat with less efficient siege tower type water assault is bonkers, bafflingly dumb. And so I was watching this, seeing all of it in the cinemas, just thinking like, this is a comical silliness. This is like a cartoon, okay? Now, in regards to the historical authenticity just generally of the film, It's not even historical fiction. We are having battles that are 300 years separated from the time certain historical figures or the time that the film is supposedly set in. The city that this is supposed to be, the last free city in this area. I forget the exact area, but when I looked it up, it's not even close to the sea, right? And so even though some of the characters have names of historical figures, the way that they're depicted is not even close to, seemingly, what they were like historically, and of course the time periods are off, locations are off. Don't even consider this like historically based almost. It's closer to historical fantasy than historical fiction, where I would say like something like Braveheart is more historical fiction, where they try to be a bit closer to dates, events, and people. It's not accurate, okay, but at least it's closer. Whereas Gladiator 2, this is fantasy, basically. Don't take anything you see seriously. Don't even consider it Rome. It's that far off. And we're going to see some examples just in the siege right here with anachronistic like things making you go, what? And this is the opening of the film, and I literally was laughing watching this. So we get a close-up of the protagonist's armor as well as his wife's. Now, women have fought occasionally in battles and in sieges, usually as a last resort when there's no other option, because husbands and also just men generally want to protect women, and women are more vulnerable than men, oftentimes not trained for battle, and even if they are trained, there are issues involved with that as well, and it's vastly less likely that women would have actually been trained ready for battle in a siege, and if they're not trained, oftentimes they'll just get in the way, and they also present issues after the siege if they get captured, ransom issues and other things like that, used as leverage again. And so sending them to safety is the primary thing they'll do. And I talk a little bit about this in my review on Night's Watch, because it also has narrative problems. If you want to understand how much this undercuts certain motivations, check out my review there. But it really causes massive narrative issues, because this is the inciting incidents. This is the main motivation for the protagonist. But just going back to the historical perspective, it actually shows that this guy here cares less about his wife for letting her fight in this siege where it doesn't look like it's going to be going too well. There's a viable path of retreat to go to safety. And yes, she does get killed in this battle, where her life could have been protected if she was kept and sent to safety. And they don't show that this is like the last resort. We must make a stand. If we lose this, life in this area is going to be ruined, and maybe if they show that there's no viable path for retreat, the Romans weren't letting them retreat. There are so many issues, because if this was like a land-based siege, the Romans could have surrounded the entire city and not letting anyone escape to freedom. All right. And that causes more, I guess, conflict, and you can use that to motivate characters better in the plot, because it makes it a more desperate situation, where she is now choosing to fight of her own free will and choice. And she doesn't really contribute that much in the battle. She kills a guy and she shoots a couple of arrows. But like I said, there's layers to the problems here. And now let's look at the armor. And so the armor that they're showing doesn't, like, specifically the guy's armor. I've tested armor before, and this looks like really thin braided leather, not hardened leather, where her armor actually looks like a type of hardened leather, so a bit more protective than what he's wearing. And we've tested armor out on the channel here, multiple different types of armor, in fact. And I'm confident you could easily stab through this armor, shoot through it. I don't think it's doing much in the way of armor for the husband here. The wife, I think it could stop potentially a couple of cuts, a dedicated thrust. You might have to try to get through it. Arrows are a maybe. I think arrows might be able to pierce this type of armor. I do notice that it is shaped to her form, boob armor. And if you know anything about the channel, you know I'm an advocate for boob armor. In terms of it's potentially effective, and there's a lot of misconceptions about it. But historically, I've seen some ceremonial depictions of potential boob armor, and this is where the anachronistic kind of stuff comes in, because women were not on the battlefield enough to make armor that so closely conformed to their body's shape. If they did, I actually think it very likely would have happened, because that's what we saw with armor generally. That armor was made. There is the muscle cuirass that we see amongst the Greeks and stuff, where they literally have armor showing male anatomy on it, forming to the male form as well, right? That was a practice that people did multiple times in multiple points of history. Just look up the codpiece, okay? And so having armor reflect certain anatomy, that was done historically, and if women fought in, on battle enough, it would have been done for them. The thing is, though, they didn't fight in battle enough for them to have custom-made armor, unless this character, lifelong warrior, custom-made armor, conformed to her body's shape completely, but I just don't buy the fact that she would have been a lifelong warrior. This is a historical period, all right? You need to justify it quite strongly, and also have her be, out of the ordinary? The thing is, though, they actually show multiple women fighting in the siege. You blink and you miss it. It's very easy to miss, but slowing down, we will see other women fighting in the battle with her. They have like a female detachment of archers. Good close-up of his armor right here, and barely even leather, and definitely not hardened leather, and it's braided in with like a type of cloth that, it would stop a couple of slashes here and there. But what intrigues me is the armor of the guys behind him. We'll get another close-up of some soldiers wearing this armor. And here it is right here. That's Lurica Hamata. Roman chain armor. But they're not Roman. Why are the defenders, who are in a completely different culture, wearing Roman armor? Did they capture it in a previous battle? I don't know. It kind of threw me like that seems out of the ordinary. Especially when in the very next shot we see Romans wearing the exact same armor, right down to the the connecting kind of block between the pauldrons. Is like we see it right here. Okay, I guess they stole it. I don't know. And then they show us the city, and you know what they show behind the city? Land. Look at all that land, like literally from end to end. Both sides is land. Land on this side, land on this side, stretching all the way across. So the Romans literally had the entire city that they could have approached from the other side, and yet they're basically choosing to commit what should have been suicide, because remember, this type of besieging tactic is very inefficient. I didn't find an account of it ever working even, okay? Maybe I missed an account, but the ones I looked up, no. But it magically works here in this film. Because movie magic, they wanted something exciting. I guess, like, you could have made it work. I'm not saying you couldn't have shown them perhaps taking a city with this attack, but they need to justify it with very simple things. Show a zoom out of the city, showing that it's surrounded by water. And this is the only way of approach. Okay, that's the only choice that you had, all right? But they literally show the opposite here, which just makes what they're doing baffling. Back quiver. The guy's reaching. Oh, you can barely see it. Back quiver in the corner there. See that, gentlemen? All right, so yeah, back quivers are a contested thing. There are some depictions of it historically. Some. Very few. For the vast majority of, archery, quivers are usually at the hip, held in the hand, tucked in the belt, arrows literally just tucked in the belt, and things. It's become like a common Hollywood trope where archers always have back quivers. So the defenders are preparing some siege equipment, and we see a very large mangonel catapult. All right, so catapults. They can be a tricky topic because, yes, they existed historically, but often depicted incorrectly. The size of this one looks too big. And I'm even starting to wonder if they had actual heads like this, like, spoon heads, basically, where some of the references I find have slings on the end, which make vastly more sense. Look, it could be period dependent because I know slings were used on trebuchets. We'll talk about trebuchets in a sec. In the medieval period. And so the thing is, though, the overall utility of mangonels is tricky to discuss. Okay, I think them using them in the siege is acceptable. Okay, this is a situation where that would make sense to actually have them. The problem is they show them being vastly more powerful than they would be. They function on torsion, rope torsion, to throw projectiles, and without a sling attached to the end, just like a spoon head container like they're showing here, that would also limit the range. This would barely be able to throw something over their wall and probably get 20 meters beyond the wall at most. They show these things basically functioning like artillery in this film. Way, way too powerful. Also, the things they're throwing are too big. That's like the things that you'll probably throw with a trebuchet. Again, we'll talk about trebuchets because, yeah, okay. Whereas the projectiles mangonels threw, usually they were half the size of this, and we're looking at like a rock, about, yay big, okay? This is a more fantasy depiction of what a historical mangonel would actually be. You can see them loading big jars of oil, flaming oil, and then launching them over the wall. The boats are still a very far distance from the city, raining down, and you'll see another shot of these things arcing through the air a bit later, and it's bonkers. And what I find interesting, they actually show the catapult they have on set launching this, and have a look. Like the thing that's being thrown off of the mangonel, it's moving forward, and I don't even think this, what they're showing here, that would even get over the wall of the set. But then they quickly cut, and it's launched off like it's artillery. And then they show this. A trebuchet. An actual counterweight trebuchet. I'm going to show how much effort it would have taken for them to check the historical viability of this. Go to Google, type in trebuchet, and we'll go to Britannica. Trebuchet, siege engine, long arm, projectile. It's got a section on the mechanics, but, history. Trebuchets originated in China between 5th and 3rd century BC. So, that's a little, in China, by the 6th century AD, okay, the invention had spread to Eurasia and reached the Mediterranean, 6th century. And even then, it took a bit longer for it to be more widely adopted as a common siege weapon. This film is based in, I think, the 3rd century AD. About 300 years before this technology would have caught on, developed in this area. It hurt me when I saw the trebuchet. I was just like, what? And then, again, even the trebuchet... there was multiple trebuchets, actually. You can see the other trebuchet arms there and there behind it. So they have there's many of them. And the range, just like you can see where these boats are versus where the city wall is here. Their range is way longer than what trebuchets of that size would definitely be able to reach. And so the Romans are now shooting back their own pots of oil, and they're exploding like they're napalm. And then they have mangonels as well, ranged way too far. And look at just the level of projectiles that's filling the sky, arcing through the air. At least the Merlons are barely high enough. I would say barely high, usually a bit higher, but they're not coming up to their, waist. At least they're not that small. Every time I see the Roman Navy here, I just think about, what are all the other boats without the towers? I mentioned again, it's comical. They're there to do nothing. Raise the tower! Raise the towers. So this is where they show that these towers are like telescoped. And so you can just barely see them being raised here. And as they approach... Okay. They're approaching the city wall. This is the other logistical thing that I would be concerned about, because on a close-up in the corner right over here, you see the city wall here, and then there's a bit of a rocky land section here coming out, you know, what's that, at least 6 to 10 meters? It depends on the length, maybe 5. So the approach we get, okay, we can see even more. Like, okay, there is a good section of rocky land that these boats would be getting grounded. They would stop about right here, where the arrow is indicating, and not even reach the wall, by even what they are showing in the movie. And again, remember, some of these Roman boats have kind of ramming points right here, and so they're going to hit the rocks and just not be able to move, all right? You've just run aground. And then the bridges on the seashells can't even extend past the bows of the ships, let alone getting past this rocky section where they wouldn't even reach the wall. Whereas, look at the more historical version, where it has a more lengthened kind of bridge section that can extend much further past any potential rocky section reach the wall. But even here they're depicting that, okay, this is actually more like deep. It goes right deep after the wall, giving room for the boat, because that's the way that they would need to work. And even this larger one with a siege tower, look at what they have with the bridge here. See how far that is extending forward? Because that's just a logical thing, and you don't need to be an expert to notice this. Just looking at this right here is... it's not going to work. And so what they end up doing is just using basic, movie magic, hand wave. It just reaches the wall because it does. Because what you'll notice here, do you see a distinct lack of, like, rocks and section? Like, we literally cut from one angle where they showed rocks in front of the wall, and on this angle, suddenly there's no rocks or anything. It's just ocean right up to the wall face. Continuity. And here, this is the hand waves, like, oh, it is approaching the wall. Just trust us. Where you've got the rocks here. The boat would have run aground a good 5-10 meters back at least, okay? And then what happened to the ramming point as well? Wouldn't have that's now kind of getting embedded into the wall, it seems, because of how close it's supposedly getting. And then they show that, oh no, trust us, it's now it's only hitting the rock. Where, no, that's not what you have shown. Look, because this is what they're showing here. They're showing the rock is coming out right to here, okay? And so they show the boats like this. Look, you see the rocks even here. This boat is going to get stopped right on this line there and not even get close. But these boats have just, like, the rocks are disappearing. They're parting to let the boats reach the wall so conveniently. And look at the projectiles arcing through the sky. Like... The ranges are bonkers in terms of how crazy far they can reach. Just arcing through the sky like that. We're about to see an example of the poor writing quality of the film, and this is reflected through most of the film. You can see me point out examples in my larger review. It's just appearing here in the tactics of the battle. So Pedro Pascal, the character he is acting, gives the command, drop the drawbridge, and this person replies, the drawbridge is stuck. I'm wondering, like, when I was watching this, I wonder what's causing it to be stuck, and how could we fix it? Because this prompts Pedro's character to get off the command position, grab a shield, and rush forward to the siege tower, because no one else is capable of figuring out this puzzle in getting the drawbridge down. Like, everyone's just like, so is it going to be a mechanical problem? Is the solution going to be something clever that only this character can do? But they wanted to justify a reason for Pedro's character to do something heroic. But they don't pull it off because the thing he actually does is so obvious. I'm wondering, why didn't anyone just think of that? But they force it regardless because that's what they want to achieve in the story. They want the character to do something heroic, impressive, whatever, yet they didn't have the creativity or writing ability to think up of something that was more logically valid, that actually made sense. Because what does he end up doing? Oh, by the way, here's another shot of another female archer. Like I said, blink and you miss it. Pedro is approaching the wall, but here, so we see the wife in the foreground, and behind, you see other female archers. So I said there are other female defenders in the siege, and they're literally wearing boob armor, as you can see there as well. Blink and you miss it. Because on my first view, I thought she was the only one, but I only saw it as like, oh, okay, they just must have a detachment of women archers because modern day political correctness, not historical accuracy, that's for sure. So already the siege tower is much closer than what the boat would allow. The bow of the boat is now embedding itself into the wall. Just forget about it. Just don't think about it, okay? Pedro takes off his helmet in the middle of a battle, which is interesting because recently we have filmed a fight scene on Shadiversity. I'm really happy with it. Do go check it out. It's a cinematic styled fight scene based on historical swords maneuvers, putting my money where my mouth is, giving an example of being able to do it. And there's a narrative reason why we take off our helmets in there. It's a taught by Tyranth's character saying he feels he could beat me without his helmet. My character takes off his helmet as a response, saying, well, no, I've got courage, I'm willing to fight you without a helmet as well. And so there's a narrative reason in a duel, okay? So there are reasons you can give as to why people would take off a helmet, but there's no reason here. And it's in the middle of a battle, which is even like don't ditch your helmet in a battle. But Pedro literally just took it off. Literally, he's climbing the stairs, raises his head, and he pushes it off himself. Why? And then, okay, he's now at the siege tower. Like, it's stuck. It just won't lower. What's the big brain thing you think he'll do to lower the drawbridge that no one else could have thought of? Because everyone else has just become idiots. He chops the rope with his sword. And the drawbridge falls. That was it. He had to risk his life, get into the thick of battle, get a shield, go all the way up to chop a rope. Because no one else thought of that, apparently. So I'm wondering why Pedro decided to ditch his shield and just kind of running through, flailing, kicks this guy down and is out. He just doesn't get back up. Slashes this guy in the back. He doesn't recover. And again, this is suicidal fighting, letting enemies pass him that aren't. He just kicked that guy down before. He's not dead. He could easily get back up and try and hit him in the back. And is rushing all through the enemy, flailing around, not trying to keep a line with his own soldiers. And look, then he dives down into more enemies. This is just chaotic mess, where what would happen is if they are able to breach the walls, they would want to kind of create, best its equivalent is almost like a type of beachhead. That's a more modern term, of course. But they would want to push out a group of soldiers with shields and everything to push back, make a bit of a circle around where the siege tower is reaching the wall, so other soldiers can get on safely, and they would push out in a line, keeping a type of formation, keeping the men together, not just devolving into this random mess, which is something we see often in Hollywood battles. And Pedro's just lost the plot. He's dived into the enemy lines where he could easily just get stabbed in the back, shot randomly, but I guess they wanted this, he's so heroic because he's fighting through the enemies when this is suicidal in what he's actually doing. It looked like main character just stabbed the guy through the armor, but on closer inspection, it almost looked like this chainmail didn't cover the sides. And which is very odd opening, like vulnerability for armor. Oddly made chainmail. Then we see this shot here, and I am really confused by the positioning, the continuity and logistics of what they're depicting here. The mangonels, the catapults, are facing presumably the ocean, yet there is a gate right in front of them. Meaning, is there like a city gate facing the water. And then we're going to see something even more baffling. Romans are actually approaching defenders in the city. Now they're inside the wards, which is like that's the closed off sections of either city or castle, right? And how did they get there? Did they come down from the walls? But then we see this. There is like gates in the walls and Romans flooding the internal wards of the defended city, okay, with soldiers. Where did these guys come from? Are they actually saying that there was a separate army, a separate force besieging the city from the land, and they've breached it from a different section and now flooding in? Or are they saying that they're coming from another section where the boats breached the wall and all these soldiers got aboard? It's like, I just have no idea. They didn't show anything of where all these soldiers are coming from, spewing out of the city. There's hundreds of them almost. Seriously, where are all these soldiers coming from? They're not coming from the boats where the Romans attacked, but they're just appearing from... They're Romans suddenly appeared. No one expected a Roman army to appear. They're like the Spanish Inquisition, because no one expects them. Is that reference too old these days? That's depressing if it is. And then back to flailing about, no formation structure, random melee fighting. Here is where we see the death of the protagonist's wife. And she shoots one of the general's leaders in the army right through the neck, okay? That makes her a viable military target because she's picking off the leadership of your besieging force. And so Pedro's response here, okay, to one of his commanders getting shot is to take out that archer because she's apparently a pretty good shot and we don't want that threat on the battlefield. And so he tells his archers to just kill her, which of course she gets shot and right through her leather armor, which I think, okay, maybe, yeah, I can buy that. But the film is trying to depict this as like, they want it to have the same emotional weight as what in the previous film with the death of Maximus's family. But the thing is, though, she's a valid military target here, okay? This isn't like Commodus killing innocent civilians just to spite Maximus and to be evil, right? This was a legitimate response to a threat on the battlefield in response to her shooting one of... And was that Pedro's mate? Was it his brother? Was it a family member? Okay? And so this doesn't hit with not even close to the same emotional weight as the death of Maximus's wife, because it was also the death of his son as well. Innocent civilians compared to a valid military target here, and the film wants us to be like, oh, that bad Pedro Pascal character person, and also protagonist, you were valid in your desire for... And he goes on a massive quest for revenge now, when he's a soldier. Did you think this might not have happened with your wife in the battle? That she could have been killed by the enemy? Like, he's acting like this was as egregious and vile as what Commodus did to Maximus's family in Gladiator 1. And it's not even close. And I don't know the larger context of, Rome besieging this city. They don't go into it. They kind of just say it's Rome being evil conquerors, essentially. It doesn't change the fact that she knowingly entered into this battle, and she should have actually fled for safety with the other women and children, and that this outcome was a very big possibility. But they're acting like it's a shock. They weren't expecting death to happen on the battlefield, and Pedro basically ordered her murder when it was a valid military target. And I'm not saying losing your wife would be devastating, but if it was going to be that devastating that he can't live without his wife and she's that important to him, why is he letting her fight in the siege? If she was that important to him, he would send her to safety. He never would have fought in the first place. And then he gets knocked out, he falls down, and he wakes up and the siege is over. That's it. This battle was terrible, yet we are given one last kind of thing, because we were actually shown enough of the relative position of these characters. They were in front of the boat, or close to the boat of what Pedro Pascal's character was on, okay? And they also showed the section of rock in front of the city at that point. We can more logically presume that him falling off at that section of wall meant that he should have fallen off nearby where Pedro's boat was. And same with his wife, because his wife, washes up to shore near this location. The problem is they show what's in front of like a good section of land, all right, leading to a section of rocks and everything, like extending more than 10 meters beyond the wall. Like see where the boats are? Because the boats can't get closer to the wall because they're hitting landfall here. Like, where did this land appear from? They didn't show that was where this part of the wall was. And they're even showing that there's so much land here that the boats that are nearby can't even reach the wall. There's like a big... So this movie is not keeping track of its continuity of the logistics of the battle at all, as to how much land is in front of the walls, how close the boats should logically be able to reach them, where did people die and land and fall. It's a mess. And that's what this opening battle is in a Gladiator 2. A complete mess. It is... Look, it's not the worst one I've seen. I think Rings of Power was more stupid than this. But that's not hard to be less stupid than Rings of Power. This is still one of the worst historical sieges I've seen on a big budget movie like this. It was bafflingly dumb. I literally laughed in the cinemas by all the silly, dumb elements in it. And it doesn't help a film that, from my perspective and review, really struggles with the narrative, getting you invested. And I don't consider it a good film. I don't think it's the worst thing ever. If you want my larger thoughts on it, you can check out my review on Night's Watch. But just for Shadiversity here, this siege, opening siege of Gladiator 2, was horrible. Let me know if you've liked this video by clicking the thumbs up, like, and also subscribe if you enjoyed this content. Let me know if you are interested in me doing a battle scene autopsy for the first Gladiator film, because that has a battle as well. And look, there are issues in it, in the opening battle of Gladiator 1, but not as many as this one. I'm sure there's plenty I could comment on. So let me know if you would like me to do that video. Please do subscribe. It definitely helps out the channel. And also, if you want to see a battle that's even shockingly, but it's vastly more dumb than this, check out my battle scene autopsy for Rings of Power Season 2, The Siege of Eregion. It's right here. I hope to see you there. And until that time, farewell.